Welcome to the Equality in Housing series with Housing Options Scotland and the UK Collaborative Centre for Housing Evidence, with your hosts Pedro Cameron and Dr. Gareth Young. This series explores equality, diversity and inclusion in housing research and practice through sharing stories and experiences from people working across the sector. In this episode, we speak to Rohini Sharma Joshi. Rohini is an experienced equalities consultant who has been a prominent figure in Scottish housing for over 30 years and was awarded an OBE in the 2022 New Year's Honours List. We spoke to Rohini about the barriers ethnic minority older people face around housing and how research, both existing and future, can improve their ability to access and meaningfully engage with services.
My name is Rohini Sharma Joshi. I came to Scotland in 1981. I always lived in Scotland. My first job was with the Edinburgh City Council Housing Department. I worked there for 11 years. And then while I was working with the council, I was also volunteering involved with community and equality work with the organizations and the communities. So then this opportunity came with the housing associations, 3 national housing associations, to work as a housing and equality putting together. So that job was made for me. And then I started with the housing associations who mainly focused on older people and worked with them for 22 years. So it makes my over 32 years in housing, equality and older people. So I've recently joined Age Scotland as a part-time and also do equality consultancy part-time as well to really, because, it's my passion. I enjoy, working with, inequality and housing and older people put together. Yes.
I guess to really start off, it's quite a big question, but when we're talking about older people, we're talking about such a wide and varied group of people.
Yes.
So really just to get some of your thoughts and insights on how do you think we should be thinking about housing for older people and how can we better understand the multiple different issues that different people and different groups face?
Yeah. I think when I talk about older people, although I work with the mainstream housing associations and the housing sector, then my expertise and skills came in place when we start looking into delivering for most marginalized, underrepresented groups. So then I developed some project and initiatives, became examples of good practice, and there was award-winning program. So I think I always say in the equality work is easy to do that, but then start looking into meeting the needs of those groups as well, must be included in any service delivery. Yeah, of course, their main issue with any, as a humans, older people, is location, safety, accessibility, amenities, and, housing for life. And when their care needs are, taken into consideration in the later age as well. Another side is a poverty, long-term illness. Those are very common issues. So, or recently loneliness, post-COVID. And then if you add then on to for those marginalized communities who face barriers, it could be language, it could be culture, access services, they don't know where to go. So those barriers multiply, those needs are a little bit more complex in that. You're absolutely right when we talk about then ethnic minority communities, and we need to understand within those ethnic minority communities, there are many communities. It's not as the homogeneous community as such as a one ethnic minority community. People have come from various countries, different backgrounds, different religions, different languages, traditions, cultures. So you name it. So I think what happens is that with the equality and delivery servicing to all is that it's a fear of getting it wrong. And then, how we can understand this, how we can know this. There's so much to know. We will make mistakes. So in how let's not do too much on this and just a little bit tokenistic on statements and discussions, etc. So it is, but for equality to be meaningful, we need to first of all understand who our customers are. To be it for a national level, we need to know our population. We need to, also at the local level, need to understand who we are serving. And then it is smaller community levels when it comes to housing associations or the organizations. It is that learning and understanding can take, the service providers closer to knowing who they have in the area, and then start further learning from there. So there's with these ethnic minority communities, with the barriers, the reliance on family, friends, or just put up with it, what they have, and then they don't have any way of complaints. So there are multiple of reasons, but then we need to find solutions. We need to take it one step at a time and start delivering. Is achievable, can achievable, particularly as say in Scotland, that's where it always worked. We are a small enough country to make it work because numbers are not that big. But if we need to know and understand that.
That's that thing that you mentioned there about fear of getting it wrong. That's something that's come up in every conversation that we've had so far. So yeah, that seems to be across the board a roadblock basically to implementing sort of real good equality, diversity, inclusion policies.
Yeah, I think the terms like hard to reach, and we don't know what to do, don't know where the communities are, how to reach them. We don't speak the language. Will we be welcome? Mm-hmm. If I always say and challenge the officials and staff, whoever it is, you get paid to do a job. So when you're doing a job, you need to do a job, then you're serving everyone. It should not be your choice who you think receives the service, who doesn't. So it is, I think when it comes to fear, it is a fear because there's a lack of understanding. Lack of understanding comes by training, understanding what is your responsibility under the law, Equality Act, and in general, involve tennis participation, tennis involvement, other consulting communities, and etc. So if the organizations, service providers are not reaching out, not making contact, because if they have fear they can get wrong, they don't understand, they need to understand that looking at the other humans, they need to pave a way of getting in touch. I think another worst thing is that they take one-off action. This, look, we tried, we did, nobody turned up, nobody got involved. So it has to be sustained program by which you go make an effort. Go. I mean, none of us would really be open up to anyone at the first half an hour meeting. Say, here I am. We do this and this. If you need me, come to me. I wouldn't, because it has to be more than that, especially for those groups and communities, they haven't had that relationship. And then there is a number of issues with there's a lack of trust with the providers, not understanding. If they say it, they come and do it. And then another thing is keep going back. Here it is, who we are. Come to us if you need us, but not really have that very open details. Like, this is how you can contact us. That's what we are doing. Come over. We will meet your need of any language barrier, if your cultural thing. You tell us. I think they had an open discussion of, you tell us what your needs are. We record it, and then we will make sure we look over what needs to be done. I think one of the biggest problem is that ad hoc service. Some organization doesn't get touch, they're very reactive. They react to inquiry and an issue. and deal with it, but they don't learn from it. They don't put it in their practice, make sure, like, we learned this. Remember, we need to follow up and develop that learning. And then you continue to develop that learning, it becomes your confidence. It means that you feel confident enough to go and reach out to the communities, and they feel they can trust you that you will deliver. Trust is built by delivering, not by talking.
Absolutely.
It's not a talk. I mean, somebody needs a house, or somebody needs a benefit, so somebody needs some information. Just telling them, just talking to them, it doesn't deliver. If you take them through the journey, help them whatever barriers they face, then they will trust you, they will come back to you. So there are fundamental small issues which need to be looked at to making a house. I think everyone's need, the recent problems, recent issues being in the papers and stuff, it can be caused, someone's life could be lost because of these barriers. And then people will ask around, do you know this happened? Well, how can we deal with this? But I thought, how come you never established that relationship at the start? You sign up on a tenancy, you sign an agreement. I'm sure you should know what that individual's needs are. Just give them the key of the house and just get on with it. Yeah. So I think this human touch is lost in that. It's very much them and us. We should be grateful or thankful you got the house. Here it is, just get on with it. I think that sport, which goes with the housing, that is I think most vital factor in a human life, because a house is our fundamental need. If you can get right, everything else, the health, the environment, keeping warm, eating well, comes with it. So house is a fundamental right for us. It needs to get that right.
Yeah. So, if we move on to talking about older people in particular, in terms of housing in the UK, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing older people in terms of access to housing?
I think what happens, there's a big gap. There's a strategic planning, and there's operational planning, and there's service delivery. Strategic planning, I sometimes astonished at how much time and effort goes into, like, every 3 years they review and change the strategy. And strategy develops, goes for consultation. They don't make it easy. Consultations aren't easy. And I talked about this many times. I'm not very sure they feel who has a time as an individual to sit down and write their 10, 15, 20, 60 pages consultation papers. They make it so bureaucratic because it's strategy consultation. But those strategies should be really for people at the grassroots level, because those strategies are for them. And then it will come to operational time again. It's some tokenistic consultations, some discussion, etc., because they want to be seen to be making sure they're being inclusive, other than making sure the practices are inclusive. I think that there are different layers, and then if it's continued with the strategy with the strategic, with a very much wish rather than will, and then it's really snowballing effect from strategy to operations to the delivery, and it gets lost. And for example, the recent COVID, was a evidence of this, the lack of services for those marginalized community, ethnic minority communities, people with the disabilities, people, the communities from LGBTQ, older people communities, because they were not receiving services, they were left out. The COVID was evidence that's the reason they disproportionately affected by it. Do you know how many people died? How many older people died from ethnic minority communities during COVID? They had no one. There were some community organizations they were used to go to. They helped them. They were closed. They had nowhere to go. So again, I guess it's a human cost at the end. People will face when, happens. You go back, have a discussion, you have a long discussion. Everybody was so worked up about this, and they have a meeting. We need to get right. Let's have a discussion, have a meetings, and nothing happens because we're going back to normal situation. We are back to normality. Services are open, but we don't learn from them. We just keep going as it was before, as nothing has happened. Mm-hmm. There are some changes. There are some discussion taken. There's more willingness to do it, but I still think it's getting to the root cause of it, that why we are not able to meet the needs of all, why we're still ignoring, why we're still finding it okay for us to leave those marginalized individuals who are most vulnerable, they may be the most in need to really, to their own, to really put up with it, or no question, because they're not going to question anyone. They don't know how to. If they can't access services, they don't know how to complain or question or report. So I think it just becomes very normal then. And it's something we say. I mean, we did a report as a part of the project, lottery funded project. The report counted us in that so many case studies, so many examples of the barriers older people face. And they're expected to rely on family. If they don't have a family, their family are busy. They go to friends, their dignity, self-respect, confidentiality, nothing is valued. So, there's a house there, but then there's a life and soul and individuals. I think need to put it together. We can't have physical building to that, not see the people who are living it. I think this is most important. When it comes to housing, we talk about design, we talk about accessibility, the location, the affordability. That's very important. But also see the people who are going to live in them or are living in them.
That's really interesting. I think that leads quite nicely on to the next question, which was around, do you think there's been enough done at a national policy level to support older people? We've talked quite a lot about the responsibility of individual organisations, but do you get a sense that from that sort of central government level, that kind of national overview, that there's enough being done?
I mean, I've been part of the many advisory group, the community advisory group, and with the Scottish government on the housing and older people. I was asked to make a recommendation to the Scottish government joint partnership group. I did make a recommendation. Yes, I think there's more discussion and more talk. I can openly say it. For me, it's not going far enough. It doesn't go far enough. Just because you had a meeting and had made some notes, just because you had some example of issues you asked to bring the case studies or lived experience, it doesn't not mean that's delivering. I still think there's a long way to go. But I mean, it could be quite frustrating if you've been in equality for 20, 25 years. You seem to be talking about the same things again and again. But I think it needs to be discussed and said. I think they don't go far enough. What happens then? There is some sort of example. The example of small funding, the small projects are funding, then those examples are exaggerated as if the equality has been delivered. But it's still not. We talked about the mainstream and makes in the core of service delivery. It's not getting there. It's still, I think, moved on to some funding projects, examples, we've done that. So it could be noted in the impact assessments or the outcome reports that has been done with some case studies, but it still leaves out a bigger majority of those who are still not receiving services or good housing. They don't know how to access, they don't know who to go to. It is not open enough at the different levels and etc. I know if anybody who is not working in housing, is challenging enough for them to look for housing. just imagine the person who is not able to communicate, feel disabled or whatever is, feel barriers, they're least likely to. They wouldn't know where to go to, who to go to. And then if they do find someone with someone, but another thing is not enough information. And they see, then their expectation of a house is what they expect. And then what is available then becomes a bigger bar. I think that, this becomes a bigger gap, becomes a bigger and bigger. If I don't know what I can have, what is available out there, for me, I would like, sometimes people phone when I work in housing, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom semi-detached house in the city center. And then I used to laugh, I said, so am I. But it is because if I need this, then that's what I will ask for. Unless somebody tells me and explains to me why. What is available out there. So I think then what happens is another thing is, people think they can have this and this, and staff can have this attitude, something fed up that the things. And another thing is that older people is safety, especially ethnic minorities people as well, racism. Fear of coming out at dark, and the people said that they wouldn't leave the house because if the location, the area they are given a house, makes their life worse than what it was before, it becomes very, very difficult. So it is, I think there are many factors of, they need to be amenity, they need to be a religious places or worship places close by because they want to go there. And they want to be near the community they can visit. So, overcome social isolation. And on to that, when we did work with so many people, I know in England, there are Black-led housing association. In Scotland, we don't have any. So I had really campaign many years, and in Scotland we need purpose-built or provided housing for ethnic minority older people. Not only shelter housing, now they're the first generation who've been here in Scotland, they are growing older. Their care needs are need to take into consideration. So if we have one tenant, one resident in a sheltered housing and care housing, they don't speak the language. They are surrounded by white people across them. They can't communicate to anyone. God forbid, if they don't even have a family, nobody visiting them. So I had wrote a report with the Scottish Care that maybe their physical needs are being met by, they're getting medication on time, they get a nice warm bed, but nobody to talk to. Their soul is not being fed. They can't see their program. They can't listen to their music. They can't, watch television programs or anything. So the language they speak is lost because nobody's there to communicate. People are being nice, staff are being nice, but this is not the only service we need. As a human, it's like being in a prison in a sense, like, here's your bed and you get fed. So be happy about this, But it needs to be done, need to be looked at specific needs of certain communities. It could be quite dire something just because you don't want to get to know them as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so we've talked quite a lot about, where there's gaps and where there's things missing. But I wonder if you have any examples of good practice that is supporting older people with housing, with loneliness, as you say, or even, as you mentioned, with things like cultural, sort of racial community barriers.
Yeah. There are, in America, some housing associations have a Chinese, sofa-led shelter housing developments, whereby they have Chinese older people, they're supported by a Chinese worker, they get their own food. So that example of there's one community, they have, I'm talking about Scotland. I think that's been helping.
Where's that? Sorry, where's that?
There's a like category in Edinburgh, and then there's in Glasgow. There's one in Aberdeen, one in Dundee. So there are example of mainstream housing associations have one development which buys only for Chinese older people, but there's nothing for other communities. I tried for over the years when I worked with the housing association to really get 4 or 5 to be in one development, so at least they have someone. But it has worked in some places. Some developments who do have 5, 6, 7 tenants, when they see somebody moving into that development, they're trying to move into as well, so they can speak to someone. If someone doesn't speak the language at all, if anyone does little, and they can pop into each other's houses as well, and have a chat rather than being stuck in the house. So yes, there are examples. It's been, but I don't think it's go far enough, and they're very little, and especially these days, in these times, they aren't, and some older people are really struggling. But then community groups have done wonderful job with I think minority people. Those community groups, Erasmus later, they go to them. They have a day center, they get lunch there, they can get the information, the bilingual staff helps them. So that has been a great help for the people when they know they can go somewhere, they can phone and somebody can assist them to access services as well. But they are struggling with their funding all the time. They have to do much more for the money they receive, but they are a really lifeline for many ethnic minority older people to go to place. So that has helped. And I have said to the policymakers and the local authorities, I think you shouldn't really see those groups as someone you fund to do some of the work. You should use them as a partners. I think there's a lack of learning from both sides. Rather than the local authority thing, or let them get on with it, to helping them, some individuals, then saying, can we learn from you? Can we reach out to the community you're serving at the moment? So there are practical examples, practical solutions, but they are not looked at because everybody's too busy doing different things, and they don't have time, other work and etc. There's definitely more sort of a drive to do more, but the frustration comes, especially for us working in equality, when it's only to have meetings and discussions and what can be done, notes are done, and then have a one-off event, and that seemed to have achieved the outcome, which is.
Quite often you go to meetings which are about equality, diversity, inclusion, and you talk about it, but you don't come away with many actions from the meeting. So can understand
that. One of the other things that we're wanting to do is promote these conversations amongst the research community, and so really it was just to see if there's any current research that you've seen that's been particularly useful to you in your work, and where you've perhaps identified where there might be gaps that we can start to encourage the research community to explore further.
Gaps, I think, first of all, there's been so much research, and then nothing happens with the research. The research fatigue with it, especially minority older people. They said, we ask, we tell them, and nothing happens. So first of all, at the current situation, I think, look at the research already exists. Look at the recommendations already. Look at the findings already there. I think take that into account. Then if that has already been, something's being done about this, then see, look, okay, this is the area, there's a gap. Let's go and find out more about this. I think maybe rather than going for what's ethnic minority needs, etc., look at the specifics of it more. At the moment, social care is a current and very lively issue. It's discussed on the political level, national level, the Westminster, the Scottish Parliament. Money goes into it and being changed at the moment, review, and then it's my frustration as well. People don't really know what was happening before and what was there before, and you replacing it again. And they say like, okay, what do we do? It is like changes and asking again. It's a consultation fatigue has to somehow, somewhere, need to take into account that when you go to someone, you ask questions, what happens to that? I mean, I organize many, many consultation meetings with ethnic communities for the Scottish government. And for me, I do ask, first of all, if it's for strategy, these are the points that were made, the views of the groups you consulted with. I would like to have a copy of the final strategy where I would like to see that those have taken into account. So I can go back to people and say, look, your input was taken into account. It is just not really just because half that and we weren't good. I think if we don't demand that, it will be just left out. So I do ask, and then I think this is, it should be, I think, disrespectful in a sense when you speak to someone, get them, have the, give them your 2-3 hours of their time, and they leave, and then nothing's ever done, but it just tick the boxes you want to tick, that we were very inclusive, we consulted. So I think, are you very saving yourself by following the process, or the process is in place because you want to make a change to the people who need services? I think we need to really look at a gap as that. I think it is not to really safeguard ourselves. These processes are to safeguard those who are most in need. He needed. So I think I had campaigned about this hard to reach. I think, stop saying this hard to reach. People aren't too hard to reach just because you find them hard to reach. So in a way, organizations, providers are hard to reach, not the people. If you want to, I say, how come you can find the restaurants when you go to a different field, but you don't know the people? How come you're a housing provider, if someone doesn't pay the rent, you know how to reach to that person because they're not paying the rent. But when it comes to the service, they need something, you think hard to reach. It is about, I think the service providers, when they get paid to do the job, they need to understand it is not by them. As long as they get it right in writing, it implies they have to get it right for those people who need the service. This is what their job is. That's how we should be doing. So just a turning the coin on the other side and the flipping the coin, as I said, to saying, look, it's us. Point the finger at yourself and point the finger at yourself rather than saying, as long as we've done this, we are happy, we are okay with it. So it is the thinking need to be changed, and then someone needs to, they should be accountable for the things they do, and then say, if you promise something, say something, it should be delivered. It's accountability. And if you said something, it must be delivered. Accountability come. If there's accountability, then trust will come. If the trust comes, people will come to you. So those are the many things. I said it many times. Meetings are held when the notes are distributed at the end, and then discussion was held, wasn't noted, and then I'll go back and say, I'm sorry, this discussion took place. Equality is not noted. Why was that? So it's I think my job is to really not to be happy that I'm a part of the process. My job is also to be campaign and speak on behalf of those who don't really get the opportunity to speak. So we also set up a Scottish Ethnic Minority Older People Forum, which I established by 2017, and now based at the East Scotland. And then the idea was for me to really get ethnic minority older people themselves from varied communities and backgrounds, but then how the services are not meeting their needs. And then they also get the information as well, what is available out there.
Part of what we're wanting to do with the Housing Evidence Centre as well is to learn how we can any research and evidence that we produce, how we can ensure that the outputs are user-friendly for people in, whether that's the housing provider, service provider, older people, whoever that might be that we're wanting to target. How can we make sure that the research is accessible, user-friendly. So really it was just any thoughts on what would be useful for you in your day job, things that we can produce that you could look at and go, right, okay, now I know what the evidence is saying in this space.
I mean, yes, evidence is there. So I think we worked with it even because when I did, develop project at the Minority Older People project, and did many good practice guidelines, evidence, case studies, events, and etc. So for me, as the evidence is there. As I said, now what's needed is a new coming areas for social care, etc. Need more information on this. Is the barriers are similar, but adds on. It is more, I would say, complicated and serious when that in the later age, when it comes to care needs, when somebody's rely on someone fully, and then but those. They can't get carer who can speak the language or couldn't understand what their dietary needs are. This little bit, their soul dies. Their identity. They done so much in their life. They worked so hard all their life. Came in this country. They made their home. They worked 12 hours, 7 days a week, so making life easier for their children. And then they did the job nobody wanted to do. And then they come to the later age, they're still suffering. They still don't have, what they need, for their final few years. So there is, I know, Gareth, you very much, university or evidence and the research. I think there's a lot of research out there. But somehow it has to be research over research, all the research, what has come out of those researches, where is the evidence, that research and recommendation made change. I think this should be an next research and look into it.
Yeah.
The point you're making is quite interesting, because I've been having more conversations with people in social care centres and social care backgrounds, how they are wanting to link up with housing researchers more as well, and I think there's a lot of overlaps and lessons that can be learned between those two disciplines as well, which is what you've been saying there. So
yeah, I don't think I think research and delivery has to go in hand. Yeah. What happens, you as a researcher, so many other researchers, it's a lot of time. I think it shouldn't be about us all the time that we need to do this. I mean, we are doing the job. It has to go in hand by someone needs to really collate the information, evidence on the delivery from the researchers, what changed.
Yeah.
I try to be the middle person and, say it, to do it. And I'm very keen that when I'm into the job is that their views are hard taken into account when developing new strategies or policies. But then it's also my frustration that I keep doing that, but I need to see the evidence is changing. There has been some change, there has been, but it's very slow and it's very tiring.
We hope that you enjoyed this discussion with Rohini Sharma Joshi, OBE. Just a reminder that everything discussed were the views of Pedro, Gareth and Rohini, and not necessarily the views of Cash, Hoss or Age Scotland. We really want to seek people's views from their experiences and perspectives, and to get more people talking about these issues, and to speak across policy, practice and research. If you've got anything you'd like to add to this conversation, or you have your own perspectives, we'd love to hear from you. So please get in touch with Pedro at housingoptionsscotland.org.uk.